Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. If it's your first time stopping in, please don't forget to subscribe, it really helps us out. A little while ago I did a Craigslist video when my dad went to pick up a car. Today I have another good example. A friend of mine picked up this 2000 Subaru Forester, and basically it's not a very good car and he probably shouldn't have bought it, but he did get it really cheap. But for anybody looking for a cheap car, kind of wanted to go over when to walk away. So this car is a good example of when to walk away from even a cheap car. There's always going to be some redeeming factors. If you get a cheap car, it's probably going to need some work. Don't be afraid of that. Any old car that's cheap is going to need something regardless, but you should know when to walk away. So here we have a 2000 Subaru Forester, and you know, going over looking at the obvious things, kind of like I did in the previous video, which I will link. One of the things that I noticed, always want to check the fluids. Power steering fluid, completely dry. Never a good thing. These Subarus have been known to leak out of the rack, which this one is leaking out of the rack. So some of the things you want to look for when you should know when to walk away. This car in particular, when you close the door, keys out of the ignition, everything like that, some of the lights on the dash stay on, and it actually will draw the battery completely dead. So one of the things I look for is if it has an aftermarket alarm, which this one does, as you can see. Obviously that's not a factory piece. 9 times out of 10, the people that put them in, they could give a damn. They don't care. They're just going to try to get it done, get paid, whatever. So, you know, aftermarket alarms can be good if they're put in properly, but 9 times out of 10, every one that I've seen, they're hacked in with just crap, you know, house electronic pieces. You know, it's not automotive wiring, it's not automotive connectors. They just cobble the thing together as fast as they can to get it out the door, and it always ends up causing problems down the road. So one of the first things I always think about is if it has an aftermarket alarm, you're probably going to want to remove it because usually they're garbage. Again, looking it over, another sign of the car's life, there's actually a chunk of wood as like a battery stop, I guess. The battery isn't even tied down. It's probably not the right battery. So if you see stuff like that, that's going to tell you right away the caliber of people who are working on it, and again, probably not a good sign. So going inside now, if the car only needed a power steering rack or something like that, it wouldn't be that bad. This car, the interior, you know, if you're buying a cheap car and the interior is really nice, that's totally a bonus, totally awesome. This one is pretty ratty. I mean, you can see the door panel is completely ripped apart. The door seal is just hanging there. The back seat area and the trunk is completely full of like pet fur. So the interior is pretty trashed on this thing. It's also quite rusty. This, you know, a little bit of rust is okay. Like, we live in the Midwest. If you live in the Northeast, it's gonna happen. Every old car is gonna have rust. That one has a hole right in the panel there behind the mud flap. Again, not a good sign. Going back to the caliber of people working on this car, when I took the wheel off to inspect the brakes, I found a nice rusted wrench with a dust cap on and everything, just sitting in there, which was obviously a pretty funny surprise. I tried to put power steering fluid in, you can see it leaking. Again, you see stuff like this, you know, it's time to walk away. All these bolts are really, really rusted. This brake caliper is completely rusted. So again, a little bit of rust, it's normal, it's gonna happen, but you start seeing stuff like that, you should know, you know, it's a word of caution. So yeah, I just wanted to reiterate, you know, if there's a couple little things wrong with the car, it's not a big deal. You know, if the interior is nice, the body's nice, if the body needs a little work, but the engine and transmission are solid, these are things that are okay. I wouldn't be afraid to pick up a car like that, but when you start seeing multiple things like the alarm, the battery, You know, people leaving wrenches still attached to the car. The interior is completely shot. The body's rusted. I mean, one of the headlights doesn't work. I have to get a bulb for that. You know, all these things. It's just, it gets to a point where you need to know when to walk away. And I would definitely say that this car in particular is one of those cases where you should probably think twice about picking it up. You know, this door seal over here falling out. The tires low on air, they're kind of bald. Again, more rust. You know, there's a ton of pet fur. It's been clawed by whatever dog or whatever was back here. I mean, the list just goes on and on with this car. So these are all good things. You know, obviously, like I went over before, get underneath, check for leaks, check fluid levels. If the oil is low, it's probably burning oil. If the power steering fluid is empty like this one, I mean, you could tell right away when I hopped in that this thing had no power steering at all. So pretty easy thing, just to pop the lid off and check in there. Coolant level, another good thing. These Subarus tend to eat head gaskets from time to time, so that's another good thing to check. Make sure that that's topped off. All these are pretty normal things that you should be looking at. You know, crawl underneath, make sure that there's no leaks, which obviously this one has a couple. It actually does have an oil leak too. Another thing you can look at are the tires. Make sure that they have good tread and they're not worn unevenly. This one does have a little bit of uneven wear. And also, you know, make sure that at least on the axles they're the same. You know, over here we have a Bridgestone Dueler on the front. It's another Bridgestone, but it's a different type. You know, it's the Insignia. This side over here, right front is a Firestone, and then this is the other matching one for the left front. But you know, make sure that they're all worn evenly. You know, you don't want any funny wear that's going to tell you ball joints are bad, tie rods are bad, stuff like that. And also, you know, if they don't care enough to put at least matching axles, you know, across the front, across the rear, again, they're not going to care about the rest of the car. They're not going to care about doing the other maintenance stuff. They're just basically doing the least amount possible to keep the car on the road and going. So a couple more things you can look for. Another thing this car needed was a full exhaust. It actually was broken at the mid pipe where the cat goes, so if you had to replace that, you know, it's going to get quite costly. For me, I was able to kind of patch it back together with my welder, but these are things you got to think about. So he did have to purchase a whole new exhaust system for this car. So again, all these things add up, and if you're trying to save money buying a cheap car, you want to definitely think twice when all of these things start to add up like that. So, you know, he did get it really cheap, but at the same time, if I was there with him, I probably told him that he should definitely walk away from this one. But jumping back inside, you know, you want to make sure that you take it for a good test drive. Make sure all the heat works, the AC works, you know, all the lights, the hazards. Obviously, make sure you get it in every gear when you drive it. You know, make sure you take it for a good at least 10 or 15 minute test drive. The horn, make sure all that works. The wipers, park it, get outside, turn the hazards on. Make sure that all the corner lights are working. Make sure if it has a sunroof that it opens and closes. It's not going to stay open in the worst possible time when it starts raining and you need it closed and it sticks open. You know, this has cigarette burns. I mean, this not a very good car overall. It doesn't really have anything going for it, you know. So I guess at the end of the day, that's kind of what I'm getting at when you're looking for something. If it has a few good things going for it, you know, the body is nice. It's not really rusted. The interior is super clean, but it needs a power steering rack, or it needs, you know, a timing belt service or something like that. Don't be too scared to pick a car up like that if you get a good enough deal, but at the same time, you know, if you find a car like this that needs literally everything, the body's bad, it's rusted, the interior is basically trashed, you know, it needs all kinds of stuff in the engine bay, you know, cars like this, who knows when the last time it was actually really serviced. Spark plugs, timing belt service, you know, just the basic stuff, air filter, who knows. I mean, when you see a car that is this neglected, it probably hasn't led a good life, and it probably won't live too much longer. So yeah, thanks for watching, and if you have any questions or whatever, I'll try to answer all of them in the comments. Don't be afraid to ask. I know my last Craigslist video did pretty well, so just kind of wanted to give you the other side. You know, we ended up buying the last car, and this time if I had been with my friend, I would have told him, you know, flat out, don't buy this one. It needs way too much. So just make sure that the car has a few good things going for it. And if it doesn't have a few good things going for it, make sure that you want to actually tackle that and finish the project, or just walk away. You know, there are plenty of good cars out there, like my dad found that, you know, for around $1,000, it needed some brakes, it needed a couple little things, but overall, you know, over a year later, he's still driving that car around and it's doing really well. So you can find good, you know, pretty reliable cars for that $1,000 range. Just kind of know when to walk away. Thanks again for watching, and like I said, if you have any comments, drop them down below, and I'll link the other Craigslist video that I did if you want to check that one out too. So thanks guys.